I had a dream that I wanted to die in a vegan mainstream world. And now finally, I feel like I'm actively doing something towards that. That's my goal, that before I die, I want to live in a world where veganism is mainstream as opposed to the minority.
We are currently preparing for our special 50th episode of Going Conscious and would love to hear from you with your questions. So please send me any question you'd like me to answer for you. You can send it to me on Instagram at Nikki Trott and you may be featured. I'd love to hear from you. So back to this episode. Ghostwriter turned international best-selling author and vegan book expert Mitali, aka the Authority Creator, transforms vegan business leaders and entrepreneurs into thought leaders by becoming professionally published authors. Featured on ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox, she's helped her clients generate over $5 million in additional business revenue. She focuses on serving inspirational vegan leaders to raise their visibility and authority through her publishing company and coaching programs. Check her out at Let's Tell Your Story. In this episode, we talk about the racism that followed a recent England football match, how the Black Lives Matter movement pushed Mitali to understand that being a good person means actively doing good and not just abstaining from bad, and how this led her to start supporting specifically vegan business leaders. You're listening to Going Conscious, the podcast where we discover new ways to live a more conscious life of fulfillment and freedom. Each week, I speak with entrepreneurs, academics, and changemakers who have made big transformations, left unfulfilling lives behind, and found meaning in this new world where purpose drives success. Let's get inspired to live our unique journeys to the fullest. Let's explore the impact we want to make and deepen our understanding of ourselves, each other, and this beautiful world around us. Live your freedom. I'm your host, Nikki Trott. In this episode, we talk about why Mitali has chosen to work with vegan ethical entrepreneurs, the relief of finding her purpose, how you can become a published author to give you freedom in your business, her dream of dying in a vegan mainstream world, and the importance of being an active ally in whatever it is you believe in. Now let's go to our conversation. Mitali, hello and welcome to Going Conscious.
Thank you for having me, Nikki.
I'm very excited to have this conversation with you today and have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's been an eventful couple of days in England. Anyone who's in England will know what I'm talking about. This is 2 days after the final. So it's been eventful, it's been emotional, but I'm doing well today.
Yeah. And would you mind summarizing for our listeners? We have listeners in over 35 countries. So just briefly telling them kind of what's been going on and how it's been affecting you.
Okay, so first of all, I should mention that it is to do with the game, although it's gone beyond the game now. But England haven't been not very good as a football team, let's be honest, for a number of years now. We haven't reached a final of any major championship since 1966. So that's 12 years before I was born. And I'm not a young person. I'm a woman in my mid 40s. So when we got to the final of Euro 2020 over this weekend, it was a historic moment for us because there's people in their 40s like me and younger who've never, ever seen England in a final. So it was a historic moment. We all made plans to meet with friends and, watch this historic moment. We lost, and that was crushing. But at the same time, it's put it this way, I've never seen England win a trophy in my lifetime. So us not winning on Sunday wasn't going to kill me. It would have been nice if we won, but that wasn't what crushed me. What crushed me afterwards is what happened to the 3 players who missed their penalties. So we went to, for the people who don't watch football, it was decided on penalties, which is a cruel way to decide a match anyway, because it's less about skill and more about luck. But what happened was three of the England players that went up to take a penalty, and the penalty was saved by the Italian goalkeeper. All three of them were people of colour. And I think I speak for every person of colour in England who watched the match on Sunday. We instantly knew there was going to be a backlash. There was going to be a racist backlash. We knew it. All of our white allies, obviously completely oblivious to it. And then we woke up on Monday morning. There was the huge backlash. One of the footballers has a mural in Manchester which is completely defaced with racist language and abuse. And yeah, it was painful. It was painful to see it. And I think it's painful as someone, I'm a woman of colour. And especially what happened last year with the Black Lives Matter movement. It's happening again now. But what really strikes me and what's been painful to see is there's still so much division that, all of my white friends love them to pieces, but all of them went to bed on Sunday night not having a clue what was going to happen overnight, and waking up to the news that, all of this racist abuse was being hurled at these three very young players. One's only 19 years old, so he's barely a child, himself, having to deal with that. But every person of color that I spoke to, we all knew going to bed on Sunday night, we knew what was going to happen because we've lived this. We've had abuse thrown at us. We've felt that otherness, I was listening to one of your earlier podcasts with Dr. Judy Gunter. Very interesting lady she is. So listen to that. It was quite interesting what she was talking about. She used the phrase active ally. And I think that's what we're needing now. We need people to be actively anti-racist. It's not enough to just be not racist. Does that make sense? It's not just a case of just saying, well, I'm not racist, so therefore I'm good. And it's like, no, it means you're not bad, but it doesn't mean you're good. To be good, you have to be actively anti-racist. You've got to be actively anti-sexist. Yeah, so it's been a painful couple of days, Nikki. Maybe we shouldn't carry on talking about this. I'm sure your listeners don't want to hear me in tears or anything like that. But yeah, it's been a difficult couple of days because what started off as a historic moment, and then the final few minutes, just that horrible crushing feeling inside me, knowing that I know exactly where this is going. I'm going to sleep now and I'm not going to wake up to horrible news in the morning. And every person of colour, I believe, in England who watched that match felt exactly the same way.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Mitali. And what an awful thing. And I'm so grateful for you being vulnerable and sharing your feelings so that we can also all, wherever we are and whatever our perspectives, understand a bit more. And yeah, it's just, I really like how you describe this sense of not doing bad doesn't make you good. And it's about actually being active. And what does it mean to be an active ally? And whether that's about racism or sexism or any other issue. And I think that's been a big learning for me as well in the last 18 months, since George Floyd, and really understanding that actually you're not just racist or not racist. There's always more you can learn. There's always more you can unpick and understand. And there's always more you can do and put yourself in uncomfortable positions that you might find uncomfortable to stand up for people who are definitely experiencing a lot more discomfort than you might be. So really appreciate you bringing that such important point to us today. Thank you. And I really hope that this horrible situation leads to more positive outcomes and learning and progression in something that just absolutely has to change.
Yes, it will do. It will do. That's I've always said that when you hear or bad things happen, this actually reminds me of a conversation I had with my mother back in 2012. This was, if you cast your mind back then, Nikki, that was that year where there was that horrible rape in Delhi that became worldwide news. And my mother was devastated with that because I guess at that point in 2012, she hadn't gone back to India since she came to the UK, which was 1977. That's a long time that she'd spent in the UK and hadn't traveled back to India. So I guess in her mind, and this happens to a lot of immigrants, they exalt their country, their motherland, into this never land in their heads. That country could do no wrong, and they just create this country in their mind that is the most amazing country because they were wrenched away from it. They felt they had to leave, either usually for war could be a reason, for shelter, or they're leaving for economic reasons. They just can't eat in their own countries. So they've left to go to another country to better themselves, but their heart remains in the old country. So in their mind, the country stays this amazing place that doesn't actually exist. It only exists in their mind. So my mother, I believe, had turned India into this magical land where nothing bad ever happens. And we both know that country doesn't exist. And then this story came out, and it was just, I mean, if you look at the details of what happened to that poor girl, it just makes your stomach turn, it really does. And I remember mother being in bits about it. She was really, really upset. She's like, I don't understand why Indian men could be like this. Like, what turned them into such animals? And I had to explain to her and say, Mother, this isn't something that's just happened now. This is something that sadly has been happening for a long, long time. But the Indian society is such that if anything happens to a woman, it's her fault. She must have brought it on her. So therefore, a lot of the times the woman doesn't even say anything that's happened to her. She covers it up herself. If she does tell her family blame her and then try and cover it up. So it never came out. So the way I consoled my mother is to say, this is horrific what's happened. But the fact that these parents have come out and said, this is what's happened to our daughter, this is so wrong, and this is now international news, that's actually a good thing, even though what happened is horrific. But that was a watershed moment in India for women, because now women are now emboldened to say, look, this is happening. That started off India's Me Too movement. Actually, ironically, started the hashtag Me Too came from the US, but that movement of women being able to speak about the truth of what's been happening in their lives, that started in India from 2012, well before the Me Too movement in the US, because these parents were brave enough to not hide it and say, this is what's happening. Rape is endemic in Indian society and it needs to stop. And that's now emboldened all these other women and all these other parents to stand by their girls when something bad happens to them, instead of making them feel like they asked for it or it was their fault in any way. And that made my mother feel better. So with all of these sort of things, it's horrible when it happens. I spent most of yesterday just kind of lying in bed, feeling listless and not really wanting to do anything, just feeling depressed. But the way I always make myself feel better is whenever these things happen, these flashpoints, they're actually a good thing, because it's actually bringing to the fore the reality of what's going on, and it gets people talking. So things have to get better after that. They just have to.
Yes, absolutely. Well, yeah, I certainly agree with you. And, there's a long way to go, but we're on the journey and having the conversations. And we've talked about how we're both vegan, and we'll go into that a bit more and in our conversation today. But what you describe also really applies to veganism, doesn't it? I know you've mentioned this to me before when we've spoken, and my husband who's also vegan, had exactly the same realization of, wait, being vegan doesn't make me good. It just means I'm not doing all of this bad. I'm not causing all of this harm and hurt, but it doesn't mean I'm actually doing something positive and being good by just saying no to things which don't align with my morals.
Exactly. Well, I think the BLM movement last year had a massive effect on me, and it sounds strange that kind of pushed me into the vegan world and helping vegan business leaders and entrepreneurs, because a lot of people think, what does one have to do with the other? They're two very different causes. They are different causes, and yet they're not. I think it's the realization last year from watching, the Black Lives Matter movement, and me learning, because I have to remember, it's not just white people learning, it's people of color also learning. We're learning what we've done wrong, the fact that we've almost been complicit at times in hiding things from our white allies and not showing what we have to go through on a daily basis. So what I learned from last year, the profound thing that I learned was the goodness isn't a default position. And I think, I mean, I can't, I'm not an expert on religions. I do have I come from Hinduism, so that's what I was born into. I do know a fair about Christianity because I was brought up in a very, very white part of England. I do have a number of Muslim friends. I do have a working understanding of Islam, but I'm certainly no expert on religions. But my understanding is with a lot of religions, the way we are taught our morals is to not do things. So if you think about the 10 Commandments, for example, most of the commandments are, you shalt not do whatever it is that you shouldn't do. So maybe that's where it comes from. We have this belief that to be a good person, it means not doing bad things. So I'm not racist because I'm not racist to other people. I don't say racist things to people. I don't do racist things to other people. Therefore, I'm a good person. I am not sexist to people. Therefore, I'm a good person. I don't hurt animals. So therefore, I'm a good person. And we kind of made ourselves feel good, like because we're not doing bad things, that means we're a good person. What last year taught me is that doesn't make you a good person. It means that you're not a bad person, but it doesn't mean you're a good person. To be a good person, it's active. You have to be doing good, not just abstaining from bad. So to be a good person, you are actively campaigning against racism. You're actively calling out wherever you see it. To be a good person, you're actively anti-sexist and you call it out whenever you see it anywhere. And same thing with my veganism. I've been vegan since 2012 and I thought that made me a good person. What it meant was it didn't make me a bad person. So it was good, but I wasn't a good person. And I think I probably had the same epiphany that sounds like your husband did, which is, okay, I am not contributing to animal misery and animal torture and abuse. But what am I doing that's actively stopping that from happening? And the answer is nothing. And that's when my business changed and I started to focus on helping vegan and ethical entrepreneurs because those are the voices that I want to amplify. Those are the businesses that I want them to do incredibly well because their morals and ethics align with mine and they could be the force of good that the world needs them to be. So yeah, it's strange. There's something that is something very different, and most people would say BLM and what happened with George Floyd has got nothing to do with veganism, and yeah, it had a direct impact over the last 18 months in changing the trajectory of my own business and who I serve.
Incredible. Wow. Thank you so much. I was wondering actually, and it was one of my questions to ask you, was how had you decided to start serving vegans? But wow, what an incredible answer. And your point about religions is very, very interesting, something that I had not considered before. But when you say it, it completely resonates. And I've not been brought up in any kind of religious setting, but being brought up in England, of course, our culture is absolutely full of Christianity in ways that we don't really realize. So it's just there. And, you know, this sense of don't do this, don't do this, don't do bad things, and then you'll be saved is absolutely rife, isn't it? Wow, what a great,
I could be wrong, but that's what I think. Because it's in Hinduism as well.
Yeah.
I grew up with all of these stories, and all of these stories were all about, you know, when you do bad things will happen to you. So as long as you abstain from doing bad things, then that makes you a good person.
Yeah.
And I think collectively as a species, we do that. As long as we're not doing bad things, then we're good. And the realization that no, that does not make you a good person. That just means that you're not a bad person, but that the default isn't good. And that really has changed me fundamentally in how I am now, because I realized that just simply abstaining from doing bad things does not make me a good person. I now have to feel, I'm addicted to feeling that I'm doing good. And it's like an act, as you know, that doctor that you spoke to, Dr. Judy Gunter, I think she was called, said an active ally. You have to be an active ally to people of other races, to other, other genders, to animals, and actually be an active ally of theirs, instead of just saying, I'm not going to hurt you, but that's it. And therefore that makes me a good person. You just got to go to that next level now.
Absolutely. And how incredible that George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement has sparked so much change and inspiration across so many issues. And I do believe that understanding and educating myself more on the racism topic as part of that journey has also got me standing up more and more vocally against sexism, because that's also an issue that I feel I can really stand up against, and that's something that I've done, and especially women of color, and that has been my mission since then. And I think, even just on Clubhouse, the app, the vocal app, where there are lots of conversations, I decided that every time I heard a woman be interrupted, I would stand up for them. However it made me look, it didn't matter. It was nothing to do with that. And it was so uncomfortable at times. I really was squirming, but I did it every time. And, more and more people are doing things like that. And just all of these, actions, however small, they will make a difference.
They make a huge difference. Yeah, I think a lot of times guys don't even realize they're cutting a woman off. It's just, but it's only when it gets picked up. And this is what I mean. It's not enough that you don't do it. You have to be actively calling it out when you see it happen, which is what you're doing. And I applaud you for that. That's what I mean about being an active ally. It's just not enough being a silent ally. It just doesn't work. You need to be seen to be doing the right thing. And that's how you do good, not just abstaining from bad.
Yeah, and it's how we all learn. When we see other people standing up for other things, then we also learn more about that and can consider, how might I change my behavior in that situation next time as well. And, it's never ending. But so you had this incredible realization, and then linked that back to your veganism, and thought about how you wanted to make more of an impact. How did you then join the dots between that realization and making these fundamental changes in your business and who you serve?
Well, I've been a ghostwriter and a copywriter since 2013. So that's what I've been doing for a number of years now. And then last year, this is actually before the Black Lives Matter movement, I decided I'd like to get into coaching. The reason being is the very first book I wrote, which was in 2015 as a ghostwriter, took me over a year to write. But the seventh book that I wrote took me 6 weeks. And at that point, I'd realized that I'd distilled the book writing process down to a specific structure that just works, regardless of what the subject matter is. When it comes to nonfiction, business, self-help, how-to type of books, I had a structure. So I figured at that point, well, why don't I show people this structure, and then they can write their own books? Because me on my own, there's only so many books in a year I can write without wanting to kill myself, because, I'm so bored of writing books. But if I show people structure and say, look, this is how to write a nonfiction book correctly, then I can have hundreds, if not thousands of people writing their own books and amplifying their visibility, their reach, their authority, their credibility. So that's where the idea came about. This will be going back to, I think, April or May of last year. So before the BLM movement, this was right in the middle of the pandemic. Things had really shut down in the UK, and we're all a little bit scared about what was happening. And in the middle of that, I had this brainwave, and I spoke to my coach and said, look, I'm thinking of moving away from a done for you service, i.e. writing content for people, and actually going into helping people write their own content. So that's where that idea came about. And then it's been this slow process of awakening, first of all, with what happened with George Floyd. That really affected me. It made me turn inwards on myself and really question myself. Something that wasn't really picked up a lot in what happened to George Floyd is first of all, the shop owner, that where she, because you know the story, what happened was he accidentally gave a fake note to the shop owner. The shop owner was Asian, and also one of the policemen were Asian. And that kind of was swept away a little bit with the whole, obviously white people and black people, and the fact that there were Asian people in the mix that were complicit in the murder of this black man was something that affected me, because I've seen that when I went to India. I know for a fact that if I went home to India and I presented this wonderful Indian man that I'm going to marry, all my family over there will be so happy. Like, oh my God, yes, she's finally done it. I take them a white man, I don't think they'll be very happy, but they will probably come round eventually. I take them a black man and they'll be very, very upset. So that is something that Asian people have had to deal with the BLM movement. That feeling of, oh my God, we were complicit in this as well. That we can't hold our hands up and say that we were completely not guilty of anything here. This is to do with white and black people. In other words, got nothing to do with brown people. It did have a lot to do with us as well, in the way that we have issues of colorism within us. So it was a huge moment for me, and it was a tough year because of that, because like I said, it just made me realize that I'm thinking I'm this good person because I don't do bad things. But that realization that I've never pulled up my family on this, I've never questioned my family. So hang on a minute. If you're telling me that you would rather I marry someone of Indian descent, that makes sense, because what you're saying is you want someone who understands our culture, understands our ways, and you feel that somebody who's an outsider won't have the understanding. That makes sense. But there should be no distinction between whether I bring a white or a black man home, because they're both outsiders to the Indian culture. So why is one worse than the other? But I've never held my family accountable for that. So can you see what I mean? This is what I'm talking about, Nikki. The understanding, the realization that just me not doing bad things is no longer enough. I have to now be vocal about these things and ask those tough questions. Why do Indian people, why do Asian people look down on black people? We should know what that feels like, that otherness. We've had racism and we've had all the issues that black people have had. We've experienced that with white people in the past with colonialism. Black people should be our allies. So why do we do that to black people? And also within us, you've probably heard of this, Nikki, we have the whole colorism issue in India, where depending on your shade of skin, it actually affects who you marry, what career you're going to have, what jobs you're going to get, how much money you're going to make, all down to skin color. The fairer skinned you are in India, the better off you are. And the darker you are, the worse off you are. So why do we have that? And again, something I just kind of knew it was there. But as long as I was not playing into it, then I was a good person. And last year taught me, no, it's not enough. I need to now be that annoying person who asks those tough questions, makes people feel uncomfortable. But if that's what I have to do for change to happen, then that's what I'm going to do. And then the upshot of that is, while I was going through this process of understanding that to be a good person, I need to be an active ally, that realization that I've been vegan all these years, and yet it was something I did in my personal life. So I made sure that, the food that I bought, the toiletries that I use, the household goods that I have, nothing is impacting on any animals in any bad way. But that's just me. I'm just one person. What am I really doing? Apart from just the purchase power, I guess, so my money isn't going to any companies that abuse animals. But apart from that, what am I doing? What am I doing to further the vegan cause? Make people understand why it's important to be vegan. That there is an animal holocaust happening right now, and that really came to the fore earlier this year when I just realized the entrepreneurs I want to work with have to be vegan, ethical entrepreneurs, because those are the businesses that I want to really see flourish. And then when those businesses flourish, it becomes mainstream. There's a really good friend of mine who actually has a business called Vegan Mainstream, and her goal is to make veganism mainstream. So meat eaters become the minority and we're the mainstream. But that's only going to happen if vegan entrepreneurs succeed and have huge viable businesses. So that's when I decided I like to focus on vegan and ethical entrepreneurs only.
If you enjoy Going Conscious, please subscribe for a new episode every Wednesday. If you think your friends and networks would benefit from listening, please share this podcast of fulfillment and freedom with them. And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review. It's great to read what you think, and your support makes a big difference. Together, let's grow our courage and tools to transform and live the lives we really want to. As well as creating Going Conscious, I work as a transformation coach and conscious brand consultant. I'm on a mission to help holistically maximize conscious entrepreneurs to drive positive changes for themselves, others, and the planet. I can help you to transition and level up personally, and I can help your brand grow and make a bigger impact. To connect with me and find out more about how we can work together, find me on Instagram @NikkiTrott or on my website nikkitrott.com. Please get in touch. I'd love to hear from you, and let's talk about your path of growth and development. How has your business changed since you've been only working with vegan and ethical entrepreneurs?
Oh gosh. It's like, you know, when you feel you didn't realize you were holding your breath until you realize afterwards you were holding your breath the whole time. It's like that. It's like this relief has now come over me. I can't believe it's taken me this long to realize that this is what I was meant to do. Um, it's just so easy now. It feels so good because there is this other purpose. I've always loved working with entrepreneurs. I find entrepreneurs fascinating. I think, all entrepreneurs, vegan or not, I find them fascinating because I think as entrepreneurs, we tend to, that saying, birds of a feather flock together. We tend to be in entrepreneurial circles. So we fool ourselves into thinking that everyone in the world is an entrepreneur because we hang around entrepreneurs. What we don't realize is that it's actually very unusual to be an entrepreneur. Far more people are employees than they are entrepreneurs. Most people don't have the courage to actually go out, strike out on their own and build a business by themselves. So the fact that someone's already done that, they're usually quite unique. They're not the normal. They're not common just by doing that. So for that reason, I really, really enjoy working with entrepreneurs. They are usually the most interesting people that you can meet in a room. But now sort of narrowing down further and working with vegan entrepreneurs, it's just amazing because now it's even, these people are 10 times better because not only are they unusual in the way they've, taken stock of their own lives and said, no, I don't want to work a job. I don't want to be making somebody else a load of money. I want to create something for myself. But beyond that, they have this meaning and a reason for doing what they do that's beyond just profit. They really do believe in leaving the world a better place than how they found it. So it's amazing. And now that I'm doing it, Nikki, I can kick myself. It's taken me this long. It's like, why did it take me this long to figure out that this is what I was meant to do? But it's amazing. The conversations that I now have, I'm now in touch with so many vegan activists, entrepreneurs, business leaders, and what they're doing is just so inspiring that it's almost like a virtuous cycle that's now happening. The more in touch I am with these people, the more it feeds, the positive energy feeds into me and keeps me going, doing what I'm doing. So it's a virtuous cycle that's happening, and it's amazing. This actually goes back to exactly what we were saying at the top of the conversation. When bad things happen, it's actually a good thing because it brings things to the fore. What happened last year, the pandemic, the Black Lives Matter movement, even now just this weekend with what's happened with the football match, it's all actually good. It brings things to the fore and you strive to be a better person. And that's always has to be a good thing, surely.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. And it's sometimes, I think our whole perspective has to be changed for us to really look inside and look at what we're creating around ourselves and ask ourselves whether that's what we want or not. And I've seen statistics that more people are leaving their jobs than ever before, certainly in the US. And so I think so many people are going through this process of asking what they really care about and what they're doing and why, and if it's really right for them. And I absolutely love how you talk about the people who you work with. And as you know, I work with ethical, conscious entrepreneurs as well, and completely agree with you. They're so special and really forging their own path in life. And the more that we surround ourselves with them, the more we can grow and rise together. And you're not constantly forcing your agenda point again and again and again that, hey, you can have a positive impact on the world and also make more money than you need and then make even more impact. I don't
Yes.
have to persuade every single brand I work with to just move the needle a little bit in that position. We're starting from a completely different place and creating these pockets of positive impact and using business for good.
Yes, absolutely.
And more and more and more of us are, and then we're coming together, and it's really exciting. And it definitely feels for me like most of the world must be doing this now as well, because like you, that those are the people that I'm surrounded with. But I do see this momentum and this growth, and so many different people with different perspectives and different skill sets and different types of businesses who are all coming together under this kind of conscious entrepreneurship ethical umbrella.
I love it. I mean, it's the breadth of businesses as well. I mean, there was a time just a few years ago that vegan businesses were generally to do with food, and that was it. But now
Yeah.
you've got vegan accountants, you've got vegan carpenters, you've got vegan all kinds of, and I think that's wonderful. I was speaking on another podcast recently, and he's a vegan driving school. I just think that's one.
Really?
Yes,
Wow.
I'm gonna have to put you in touch with him because he'll be a great person to be on your podcast. But a wonderful guy who became vegan. I think a couple of years ago. I think he said. So he's been vegan for a little while, but yeah, he's now sort of starting to advertise himself as a vegan driving school. He does need to change. He's still got his car. So from what he told me is like he feels uncomfortable saying he's a complete vegan driving school until he changes his car because his car is a few years old, does have leather seats. But
Mm,
I was just saying to him, but that's wonderful. The fact that you're already thinking like that, you're already thinking your next car, you're going to make sure that there's no leather seats, and then you're going to make sure it's vegan. And it's just being conscious. I'm surprised even now, even to this day, it's going to be 10 years next year that I've been a vegan. So you'd think for someone who's been a vegan for a decade, things wouldn't surprise me, but they still surprise me. So recently I found out early this year the moon pig use like an animal glue on their envelopes. So
no.
I thought, yeah, so I thought, oh, great, I've got an account with Moonpig. I've still got about £30 worth of credit on there that I now refuse to use. But you see, you don't know what you don't know. It didn't even occur to me to think about the gum that was on the envelopes. So I'm having all of these, birthday cards and Christmas cards made, and they get sent to me, and I put them in the card and I send them off to, my friends and family, not even thinking.
Yeah.
Something else I realized recently, again through another vegan entrepreneur, who she is a vegan web designer, but she also does design for books, which is how we got in touch because obviously I'm a book coach and I help people publish books. And she was saying, "Oh yes, but you need to make sure the inks are vegan as well." I was like, "Wait, what? What are you talking about?" She's like, "Inks. You do know the traditional inks have animals?" I was like, "No." Why would I know that? She's like, oh, yes. So you have to be careful with the inks that you use to print. You need to be vegan friendly inks. I just, when your mind is blown all over again, just thinking, oh my God. And this is the thing. We've used and abused animals to such an extent that it's so pervasive in our society that we don't even know where it's being used. I didn't even know the inks were being made that had parts of animals in it. I have a tattoo on my stomach It was like somebody gave it to me as a birthday present at 22. So I couldn't exactly say no. So I'm tattooed for life now because someone gave me a tattoo on my 22nd birthday. Thankfully, it's actually a tattoo I still like in my 40s because I thought I might hate it after a few years. But again, I found out recently that most black tattoo inks usually have crushed animal bones in it.
Wow.
And when your mind just gets blown again and
Yeah.
again, you're just like, oh my God, I wish I could now go back and speak to my 22-year-old self and just say, fine with the tattoo, but can you ask this tattoo artist, does he know where his ink comes from? Because now you get vegan tattooists. There are vegan tattooists now.
Wow. Yeah. There's so many things to discover, and it's mind-blowing every time.
It is. It
And
blows my mind.
it's
It blows my
impossible to
mind.
know it all. But I've also really found personally that veganism has really been a journey, and it's not like an on-off switch. And, people have asked me things before like, oh, I thought vegans don't wear leather. And then I have a vegan friend who wears leather shoes and I don't get it. And, and I think it's really a process, actually. For me, it was certainly a process. I mean, it's more than 10 years since I've eaten any meat, but I've only been completely vegan for 5 years. And at the beginning of that journey, I still had leather shoes. I still bought a few leather things and then realized, whoa, this doesn't align at all. What am I doing? And stopped. And, it was really step by step, I think. And then understanding actually organic is so important as well. Otherwise I'm just polluting the planet and trying to only eat organic, and it's always going in stages. So I think that sometimes for people who maybe aren't vegan themselves, there can be this sense that being vegan is like one thing and these are the rules you have to follow, or you're not, and then you don't follow them, or you might choose to follow some. But actually it's a constant process, journey, relationship that each person's having very individually, and we're sharing and learning and evolving and developing, but it's never static, I find.
Absolutely. And going back to what we talked about earlier, it's, to be an active ally doesn't mean that you become all seeing, all knowing. We're only human. There's only so much you can know. I think the real thing is the real measure of whether you're a good person or not is what do you do once you've got the knowledge. So there's no point me beating myself up about the tattoo I had almost half a lifetime ago when I
No,
didn't know any different. There's no
no.
point me beating myself up about that. But what do I now do going forward? Well, put it this way, if I'm ever silly enough to get another tattoo, I will know the questions to ask. It'll be, excuse me, I will only have this tattoo if you're using vegan inks. I want certification that these inks are vegan. And if
Mm,
they're not, I'm walking away. I'm not going to have a tattoo done here.
yeah,
So it's what do you do once you have the knowledge? That's the key of being an active ally in anything. Once you know something, what do you do? There's no point beating yourself up about, like, I used Moonpig for many years because as a vegan, because I just didn't think it didn't. For some people, it may have been obvious. I know I've spoken to this to some people, and they've said, "Oh yeah, well yeah, envelope glue. Most glue is made from animal." And I was like, "Okay, well you know that, but I didn't because I don't know why I didn't, but it just never came up in anywhere in my education for me to know that glue is mainly used from animals. I just didn't realize that. And maybe it's just a gap in my knowledge, but I didn't realize that until it was brought to my attention earlier this year. And I thought, oh my God, I can't use Moonpig anymore. But it's what did I do after that? I stopped using them. And I have emailed them and said, this is why I'm no longer using you.
yeah, yeah,
So it's there's no point beating yourself up about, like you said, it's in stages. You're learning in stages. Don't beat yourself up about, oh, well, this is what I used to do, or we'll all slip up. It's not a big deal. It's what you do once you've got the knowledge.
exactly.
Yeah, that's the only thing you can do.
Yeah, if you try and strive for perfection while also still living in society, you are going to just completely stifle yourself. You're not going to be able to do anything. And I agree with you. It's about what do you do once you get the knowledge. But I think there's also that step before of how open are you to the knowledge?
Yes,
How much are you listening? How much are
yes.
you really open to changing and being flexible without judgment, without saying the other person's wrong or you've been wrong, just saying, oh, okay, I'm grateful to have that new information. And now, as you say, what am I going to do with that?
Yes.
Yeah. So I've loved your book, The Freedom Master Plan, which I have read cover to cover in the last week. and
Thank you.
I've scribbled notes all over it. And as you know, I'm writing my book now. And by the way, I'm really grateful to make sure I ask my publisher about the how vegan my book is, because I've been wondering about the sustainability side already and had not thought to ask about are the inks and glues vegan. So really glad to have that one up my sleeve before I've just got a load of books printed and found out that they don't align with anything the book talks about.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
would be suddenly calling for a second edition. But I would love to hear from you just a little bit about how you use books to help your clients who are coaches and consultants and speakers to really become an authority and step away from some of the ickiness of selling.
Well, I think what it is a book is even more so now the thing that differentiates people. So, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when businesses started having websites, but it was such a new thing. So this will be, if you go back to 2002, 2003, and if you just had a website, you were a big deal, and those guys who put their first websites up in the early 2000s, some really ugly websites as well. They wouldn't pass muster now. But at the time, that was a differentiating point. If you were a business and you had a website, it was like, wow, you have a website and you made a killing. You did so well because of that. But over time, what ended up happening is everyone got them. And now it's the opposite. Now you have to have a website just to be in the game. I've got friends, I've got entrepreneurial friends who have websites and they spent hundreds, sometimes thousands of pounds creating a website that isn't even their main lead generator. But they felt like they had to have one because who would take them seriously in this day and age as a business owner if you don't have a website? What has happened with books and what's wonderful about books is it remains a differentiating point in the way the websites didn't remain there. The thing, what happened with websites was it became something that can be outsourced out to a developer and they can develop it. So now every entrepreneur has a website. Same with social media profiles and blogs, and everyone has them. I actually do this thing when I'm speaking in a live audience, which I haven't done in a long time because of this pandemic. But what I would do is I'd get people to put their hands up. I'll be speaking to a room of entrepreneurs and I'll get them to put their hands up to, with different pieces of content to see who's got what. So I'll say, okay, put your hands up if you've got a website. Pretty much everyone's hands go up. Then they'll put their hands down and say, okay, tell me which of you guys have a business card. And most of the hands will go up. And so tell me which of you guys have a LinkedIn profile. Again, most of the hands go up. And I'd say, how many of you guys are a published author? And one or maybe two, if I'm lucky, will put their hands up. That's a differentiating point. So the reason why I moved into helping people write books as opposed to any other kind of content, because I was a ghostwriter and copywriter. So I didn't just write books for entrepreneurs. I was writing sales pages, landing pages, email sequences, brochures, anything you can think of business content wise, I was writing. But the reason I decided to focus on books is last year in the summer when I was contemplating going into coaching. And I was thinking, okay, but I didn't want to be I'll coach you on anything to do with business content because that's not really catchy enough at all. You do kind of need to niche down a little bit. So I decided to interview a number of my previous clients who I'd written all kinds of things for. And I asked them, which was the piece of content that made the biggest difference to your business, to your profits, to your visibility, to your credibility? And they all came back and they said the book made the biggest difference. Because you need all the other things. I'm not saying now you can do away with emails and sales pages and social media. Of course, you still need all of that stuff. But there is something, the way that people treat you when you're a professionally published author, they take you seriously. They see you as an expert among experts when you're a published author in the subject. And what my clients have been able to do with their books is leverage their books in such a way that the book does most of the selling for them. So I have one client, for example, who will only take consultations with people who have read their book. Because as far as they're concerned, if you can't be bothered to spend 2.5 hours to read a book on why I do what I do and how I can help you, then there's no point you being a client of mine. And he's now found that all the time wasters have disappeared because they can't be bothered to read a book for 2.5 hours. But all the people that do come through and they've read his book, nearly all of them become his clients because they've already bought into him. The book has pre-sold him and his services to them before they've even come onto a call with him. And this is quite a shy, very, quietly spoken gentleman who really hates selling or traditional sales calls. He always hated that. He's been on a few sales seminars who they tried to teach him, a specific script that he had to say. And he would tell me that it just doesn't feel right. And he felt like he was being pushy and it didn't feel aligned to him. And since his book came out, he loves it because now he's like, he told me that it doesn't feel like a sales call anymore. It genuinely feels like we're just chatting about my book. They ask me questions about my book, and then we just start talking about what he can do more for them. And he starts explaining all these different services, and they start picking what they want to do with him. So it's really turned things around for him from a sales point of view. But you'll know from reading the book, it's not just about getting rid of sales anxiety. The book can be leveraged to do all kinds of things, from lead generating to getting you higher visibility by going on things like podcasts or getting asked to speak at summits and conferences. That's kind of what happens when you become a published author and you leverage your book correctly, which is the subject of the Freedom Master Plan, because I realized I needed to write a book on this. Mainly because last year when I was doing all this research, I did find a group of people who had written a book, but the book didn't do much for them. So I thought, okay, well, what my clients are telling me that the book was the best thing I ever wrote for them. But then I've met all these other people who are telling me they've written a book and nothing happened for them. So what gives? I had to make sense in my mind. I was like, okay, so what's going on? Because if it was just the book, then why are my clients doing so well, but these people are telling me that they didn't do anything with their book? And then I realized the key was they didn't leverage their book. They were sold this dream that they just had to write a book and then just sit back and the world will stop turning. And unfortunately, the world didn't stop turning. The world just carried on as it was. And what my clients did was they leveraged their book. So the Freedom Master Plan is me asking all of those questions to my clients and saying, tell me exactly what you did with your book so that other people don't have to go through the trial and error that you did. They can just cherry pick the strategies that they think will work for their business and just implement them. Because that's the key thing. It's writing a book. A lot of people think writing a book is hard. When you have a book coach like me, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's nowhere near as hard as you think. I can promise that to anybody. However hard you think a book is, you probably need to cut it down by 50%. It's still hard. It's not a walk in the park, but it's not as hard as you think. Where you really need to work is after the book has been published. It's how you leverage a book that really makes the difference of whether you make the book work for you or not. And that's the subject of my book, because I wanted people to understand that this isn't a case of just writing a book and sticking on Amazon and that's it. It's all about what you do with the book afterwards that counts.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard that the work really starts when you finish writing the book.
It's very true. It's very, very true. And I wanted people to understand that.
Yeah.
Because I think what's happened is there are possibly some book coaches out there who've maybe sold the dream a little bit to people. You hear about that with web designers as well. You get some unscrupulous web designers who will, sell the dream of, pay me £5,000 or dollars, and I'll create this amazing website that does all these wonderful things for you. And you're thinking, yes, okay, but it doesn't matter how good the website is. If you don't have a plan for traffic,
Yeah.
then there's no point in having this amazing website. It's the same thing with a book. You may have written the best book since, I don't know, whatever the last great book was, but it doesn't matter, because ultimately, if you don't have a plan of action of what you're going to do with the book, then it just remains a wonderful secret.
Indeed.
And it doesn't do what
Yeah.
you want it to do.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, there's so many strategies in the Freedom Master Plan that, like you say, you can cherry pick and make them your own. So yeah, I really recommend it to our listeners. Anyone who's writing a book and wants to know how they can really leverage it and how they can make it work for them. Yeah, you might as well, when you go to the effort of writing a book.
Absolutely.
Make it worth
and if
it.
they do, if you do use it, it's, I mean, honestly, I'm actually thinking of maybe even doing so like an interview style with some of my clients and actually uploading it to our site so people can get even more inspired about what can happen when you just take the time to leverage your book correctly. The reason why I called it the Freedom Master Plan is that if leveraged correctly, the book, having a book in your business as a marketing tool, because that's essentially what it is. It's a marketing tool for your business, but it can give you genuine freedom in your business. And that was the idea behind it being called the Freedom Master Plan. Because when I was interviewing my clients, they kept using the word freedom. So this coach that I was just talking to you about, he was saying he got freedom from selling. I had another consultant tell me that he was earning very good money. He was happy with the money that he was earning, but he realized about 3 years ago, he realized that he'd basically given himself a very good job, but he realized that if he stopped working, he stopped earning. He was essentially bartering his time for money, which is what you do in a job. But he was doing that, and yet he didn't have a boss. He was his own boss. But this is the other thing. A lot of people assume that if you're a business owner, that somehow you've got freedom. You haven't. If you speak to most business owners, they'll tell you that they work harder for themselves than they ever did for a boss. They work longer hours than they ever did for a boss. And they don't have the freedom that they expected when they set off to create their own business. But if you use a book correctly, you can get a book to start creating passive income for you. You can get it to do the selling for you. You can get it to increase your visibility as long as you leverage it. That's the key word, leverage. If you just write it and then put it on Amazon, that's not going to work. But as long as you leverage it correctly, you can genuinely experience freedom from all the things that you don't like in your business.
Amazing, yes. And freedom, I agree with you, is something we're all searching for so much. And freedom is my driving value as well. So something which I'm constantly thinking about in relation to my business and my lifestyle in general. And so as we come towards the end of our conversation, I would love to ask you, what does personal success look like to you, Mitali? And how has this changed across your career?
Oh gosh, it's changed so much just in the last year. Never mind across the years, Nikki. We'll be here for hours if I went across the years. Just from last year, the personal success to me, I would say, spring of last year was that sense of satisfaction of knowing I've helped an entrepreneur secure their business. Remember, this is the first wave of the pandemic that was happening at that time. Lots of business owners worried about their businesses going under, and personal success to me was being able to help some of those people in securing their business. Fast forward to now, and that has changed. Now, personal success to me would be, well, when I became vegan in 2012, I had a dream that I wanted to die in a vegan mainstream world. And now finally I feel like I'm actively doing something towards that. That's my goal, that before I die, I want to live in a world where veganism is mainstream as opposed to the minority. And that was my dream back in 2012. But like I said, we have this collective consciousness that believes that just not doing bad things makes us good, and the realization over last year and this year that isn't good enough, that I have to be an active ally to animals, to other species on the planet, and to humans. So yeah, personal success to me will be what I'm doing now, which is now finally I've got to a stage in my life where everything is focused not just on helping entrepreneurs making money, although all that stuff is very, very important and we need to do that, but that I'm actually actively helping the world become more vegan and more tolerant, not of just each other, but of other species.
Amazing. And is there a key takeaway or message that you'd like to share from today?
I would say that phrase, be an active ally in whatever it is that you're against. If you're against racism, if you're against sexism, if you're against torture of animals, abuse of animals, whatever it is that you stand against for, it's not enough just not to do those things. Be an active ally, go out, be there for those people or those animals, if it happens to be animals. Be active in your goodness. Just remember that being good isn't a default characterization. It's not, I'm not doing bad things, therefore I'm good. No, it just means you're not a bad person. So if you really want to reap the benefits, the mental health benefits of being a good person, you have to actively be good. So get out there and be actively good.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And we, of course, will be recommending your book, The Freedom Master Plan. But is there another book, something that you've read recently and loved that you would like to recommend to us to add to our reading lists?
Yeah, so there's actually two of them. So these two books are so well thumbed. I'm looking at them now on my bookshelf, and they're a bit dog-eared, but that's because I keep reading and rereading them. So the first one is Simon Sinek's Start With Why. That's really important because it's all about how to build businesses with a strong why in the center. And it's so important. And that's what we've talked about for the last half an hour, my why I do what I do. It's so important for you to let the world know why you do something, not just that you're good at something. Yes, you have to be good at something, but that can't be your differentiating point, because there'll be other people who are just as good as you at whatever it is that you do. So unless you're so unique, then you have to actually differentiate yourself with the why. So that is a brilliant book. And there's also Donald Miller by Building a Story Brand. So it's Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Again, a brilliant book about how to bring the why, bring a story around your business, why you are who you are, why you do what you do, and just having that connection with people. I always remember a good coach of mine telling me that people do business with other people that they like. And that's a key thing. We get so in our heads about we have to show that we're an expert. And yes, you have to do all that. That's what writing a book is all about, showing your authority and credibility. But in the core of that, people just have to like you as well. And the way people like you is for you to tell stories about who you are, what you do, why things matter to you. That's how people get to know you and like you.
Absolutely. Yes. And lastly, Mitali, where's the best place for our listeners to find you online?
The best place just to go to my website. It's letstellyourstory.com. So that's my publishing website. Or the other thing is find me on social media with a ridiculously long surname like mine. You'll find me. It's very difficult to lose me on social media. In fact, I checked. I think the only other Deypurkaysthas on social media are my family. And that's it. So I can't hide. So you guys will, if you want to find me, you'll find me on all the major social media platforms. If you type in my surname, you can't miss me.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been fantastic to speak with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this episode with the inspiring Mitali. I'm very grateful to Mitali for sharing her experiences and feelings this week with the racist fallout from the England football match, and to her for sharing what she has contemplated and learned from the Black Lives Matter movement personally. I know it can be difficult and exhausting as traumas are reawakened, but I'm thankful that we were able to have this conversation. And I was happy to hear just afterwards that Mitali found the conversation to be cathartic and a release for her. I really believe that shifting from not doing bad to actively putting ourselves out there and doing good in any small way we can is what will together change our societies and world. Is there something, anything that you feel you would like to start standing up for more? And how might you start taking steps towards doing so? It's beautiful to hear Mitali describe the flow and ease that she has felt from aligning her business with her purpose. It really takes courage to put your beliefs out there and hang your business on them. But when you do, the rewards are incredible, from personal fulfillment to attracting soul-aligned clients. And as Mitali shares, she's now able to work and surround herself with people who are working towards a mission in the world which is aligned with her own. Very inspiring. I have experienced that when our work serves people who have values which are aligned with our own, we multiply our passion and purpose in a way that can create real movements together. What is the movement you most want to get behind, and how can you align more with others who are working in their own unique ways towards that same mission? If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe now. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star rating and short review. If you think people you know might benefit from listening to Going Conscious, please share it with them. I know I get much of my inspiration from podcasts which are shared with me. For all episodes, our library and more, visit goingconscious.com. Your support to spread this positive message of fulfillment and freedom means so much. As well as hosting Going Conscious, I help conscious entrepreneurs to transition and unleash their power and purpose with my transformation coaching and conscious brand consulting work. Discover more on Instagram at Nikki Trott or on my website, nikkitrott.com. I'd love to hear from you and to talk about your goals, questions, or how we can work together. And if I don't hear from you before then, see you next Wednesday on the next episode of Going